The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called for the third time this cycle, and Ambassador Zextai of the Vortanian Empire could feel the tension crackling through the massive chamber like electricity. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated pods, their various forms of anxiety manifesting in ways that would have been almost comical if the situation weren't so dire. The holographic display at the center of the chamber showed a massive creature floating in the void of space near the human colony's ship, New Hope. The dragon was easily the size of a small moon, its obsidian scales seeming to absorb light itself. Ancient runes carved into its hide glowed with an ominous purple energy that made even the hardiest warriors in the council shudder. "The Void Dragon has awakened," announced High Counselor Marathak, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence as he tried to maintain his composure. For the first time in 3 million years, Nix Mortis stirs from its slumber. A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Even species that didn't breathe made sounds of distress through their various communication methods. The crystalline harmonists created a discordant chime that hurt everyone's auditory receptors. The gaseous nebulons flickered between colors so rapidly it induced nausea in anyone watching. Zextai had studied the ancient texts during his years at the Galactic University. The Void Dragon wasn't just any cosmic horror. It was the cosmic horror, the thing that made entire civilizations pack up and move to different galaxies. The creature that had ended the First Galactic Empire, not through conquest, but simply by existing in the same space. "How did the humans manage to wake it?" asked Counselor Vixare, her tentacles writhing nervously. "Their colony ship isn't even fully operational yet. They've been drifting in that sector for less than a standard rotation." The display shifted to show the human vessel more clearly. It was a typical human construction, functional rather than beautiful, built with their characteristic stubbornness rather than elegance. Compared to the sleek vessels of the other species, it looked like a metal brick with engines attached. But it was also massive, carrying nearly 50,000 human colonists to their new world in the Kepler system. "Our deep space monitoring stations detected the initial awakening 17 standard hours ago," Marathak continued, his voice growing more strained. "The dragon's psychic emanations alone have already caused 3 nearby systems to evacuate. The threshold species abandoned their home world rather than risk exposure to its consciousness." That got everyone's attention. The threshold species were known for their incredible bravery. They were the ones who volunteered for suicide missions and faced down cosmic storms with nothing but determination. If they were running, the situation was worse than anyone had imagined. What's the humans' response been? This came from Admiral Korth of the Hegemony Fleet, his mandibles clicking anxiously. Surely they've begun evacuation procedures? The display changed again, and suddenly, everyone in the chamber was looking at real-time footage from the human ship. What they saw defied all logic and reason. Humans were going about their daily routines. Children were playing in the recreational areas. Adults were tending to hydroponics gardens. Teenagers were gathered in groups, apparently engaged in some sort of social activity. The ship's corridors bustled with normal activity as if there wasn't a universe-ending horror floating less than 1,000,000 kilometers away. "Are their sensors malfunctioning?" whispered Counselor Yith, her scales turning pale blue with confusion. "Negative," replied the technician operating the display. "We've confirmed that their sensor arrays are fully operational and have detected the dragon. Their tactical computers have classified it correctly as an extinction-level threat." Then, why aren't they running? Zextai found himself asking aloud, though he'd meant to keep the thought private. Before anyone could answer, the display zoomed in on a particular section of the human ship. Through a large viewing port in what appeared to be a residential area, they could see a human family. 2 adults were sitting at a table, apparently sharing a meal. Between them sat a small human child, perhaps 6 or 7 years old by human standards. The child had pressed her face against the viewing port and was looking directly at the Void Dragon. She was waving at it. "By the 7 suns," breathed Ambassador Zextai. The child doesn't understand what she's looking at. But even as he said it, he realized it might not be true. Human children were known to be remarkably perceptive, often understanding things that adults missed. The fact that she was waving suggested she saw the dragon not as a threat, but as something else. The chamber fell silent as they watched the little girl continue her enthusiastic waving. Her parents seemed to notice her excitement and moved to join her at the viewing port. Instead of pulling her away in terror, they seemed to be engaging with her curiosity, pointing out different features of the massive creature floating in space. "This is insane," muttered Admiral Korth. "Do they not understand what that thing is capable of?" As if summoned by his words, the dragon began to move. The massive head turned slowly, deliberately, until its eyes, each one larger than most space stations, were focused directly on the human ship. The ancient runes along its body flared brighter, and psychic waves of such intensity washed over the monitoring equipment that half the displays in the council chamber flickered and died. Emergency alerts began blaring from every monitoring station in galactic space. 3 more star systems announced immediate evacuation protocols. A trading post at the edge of the sector simply vanished from all sensor readings, either destroyed or transported somewhere else entirely. But the human ship continued its course, steady and unwavering. "They're going to die," said Counselor Vixare flatly. "We're about to witness the extinction of an entire human colony." Zextai found himself leaning forward in his pod, unable to look away from the display. The child was still at the viewing port, but now she had been joined by other human children. They were pressed against the transparent aluminum, pointing and chattering excitedly as if they were at some sort of entertainment display. "Should we warn them?" asked someone from the back of the chamber. "Warn them of what?" replied High Counselor Merthak. "What could we possibly tell them that would help?" "Excuse us, humans, but you're about to encounter a creature that has ended civilizations older than your species. Even if they believed us, what could they do? Their ship isn't capable of faster-than-light travel. They're trapped." The dragon's eyes were fully focused on the human vessel now. Each pupil was a swirling vortex of darkness that seemed to pull light into it and destroy it. Ancient beings who had witnessed the dragon's previous awakenings described looking into those eyes as staring into the heat death of the universe itself. But the human children continued to wave and point with excitement. "There," said the technician suddenly. The dragon's moving closer. Indeed, the massive creature was slowly, deliberately closing the distance between itself and the human ship. Its movements were fluid despite its enormous size, like a predator stalking prey. Ancient fins that stretched across light years rippled through space-time itself, distorting reality around them. "How long until contact?" asked Admiral Korth, his voice barely a whisper. "At current rate of approach, approximately 14 minutes, came the reply. 14 minutes until the humans encountered something that had made gods flee in terror. In the viewing port, the little girl had apparently convinced one of her parents to lift her up for a better view. She was now pressed against the transparent aluminum with both hands, her face bright with wonder and excitement. Other children had joined her, creating a small crowd of young humans all staring in fascination at the approaching cosmic horror. "They think it's beautiful," realized Zextai with a start. And perhaps from a certain perspective, it was. The Void Dragon was certainly magnificent in its terrifying glory. The way starlight bent around its form created patterns that could be considered artistic. The runes carved into its hide told stories older than most stars. But beauty was typically something you appreciated from a safe distance, preferably in another galaxy. 10 minutes until contact, announced the technician. The dragon was close enough now that its individual scales were visible. Each one was the size of a human city, black as the void between stars, but somehow containing depth that suggested infinite darkness within. The creature's breathing created waves in space-time that the human ship rode like a small boat on an ocean. "The humans still aren't taking evasive action," observed Admiral Korth unnecessarily. Everyone could see that the colony ship maintained its steady course, neither fleeing nor preparing for battle. It simply continued on its predetermined path, as if the most dangerous creature in the known universe wasn't bearing down on it with obvious intent. 5 minutes. In the viewing port, more humans had gathered. Adults now, joining their children in what appeared to be eager observation of the approaching dragon. Some were holding what looked like recording devices, apparently documenting the encounter for posterity. Others seemed to be explaining things to the children, pointing out different aspects of the creature's anatomy. Zextai noticed something that made his blood run cold. One of the human adults was opening the viewing port's protective shutter wider, giving the gathered family groups a better view of the approaching dragon. They were making themselves more visible to the creature, not less. 2 minutes until contact. The dragon's head was now close enough that its eye took up most of the viewing area. The swirling vortex within its pupils seemed to be rotating faster, reality bending around it in ways that made the Council's monitoring equipment struggle to maintain coherent readings. 1 minute. The little girl who had started this whole observation pressed both hands against the viewing port and seemed to be saying something to the dragon. Her lips were moving rapidly in what looked like excited chatter, as if she were greeting a friendly neighborhood pet rather than a cosmic force of annihilation. 30 seconds. The dragon's massive head was now so close that its breath fogged the viewing port. Each exhalation was visible as waves of energy that should have torn the human ship apart at molecular level. Instead, the vessel rode these waves like a leaf on a gentle breeze. 10 seconds. The dragon's eye was directly in front of the viewing port now, so large that the humans could probably see their own reflections in its surface. The little girl raised one small hand and placed it flat against the transparent aluminum. Contact. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, nothing happened. The dragon's massive eye stared directly at the gathered humans, and they stared back without fear or hesitation. The little girl's hand remained pressed against the viewing port, separated from the cosmic horror by nothing more than a thin barrier of transparent metal. Then, slowly and deliberately, the dragon blinked. When its eye opened again, something had changed. The swirling vortex that had seemed so threatening now appeared almost curious. The runes along the creature's hide shifted from ominous purple to a softer blue-green color that reminded Zextai of peaceful oceans. The little girl said something to her parents, and her father lifted her higher. She pressed her face close to the viewing port, and, to the absolute horror of every being watching in the Galactic Council chamber, she kissed the transparent aluminum directly in front of the dragon's eye. The effect was immediate and unprecedented. The dragon's entire massive form shuddered, and waves of energy rippled outward from the point of contact. But these weren't destructive waves. They were something else entirely. Something the monitoring equipment couldn't quite classify. "What just happened?" whispered High Counselor Merthak, his voice barely audible. Before anyone could answer, the dragon began to move again. But instead of destroying the human ship or dragging it into the void, the massive creature carefully positioned itself alongside the vessel. Its movements were gentle, protective, like a parent shielding a sleeping child. The runes along its hide now glowed with warm, golden light. In the viewing port, the little girl was bouncing excitedly and pointing to different parts of the dragon's anatomy, apparently explaining something to the other children who had gathered around her. Her parents stood behind her, looking amazed, but not afraid. "The humans have somehow befriended it," said Admiral Korth in disbelief. But Zextai suspected it was more than that. The dragon wasn't just tolerating the humans, it was actively protecting them. He could see the way its massive form had positioned itself to shield the colony ship from cosmic radiation and debris. The creature that had ended civilizations was now serving as a guardian. The implications were staggering. If humans could somehow form bonds with cosmic horrors, what did that mean for the rest of the galaxy? What did it mean for the careful balance of power that had existed for millions of years? As the council chamber erupted into panicked discussions and emergency planning sessions, Zextai kept his eyes on the display. The little human girl was still at the viewing port, still talking excitedly to the dragon that could have annihilated her entire species without effort. And somehow, impossibly, it was listening. 3 standard days had passed since the impossible first contact between humanity and the Void Dragon, and the Galactic Council was in complete chaos. Emergency sessions ran around the clock as representatives from hundreds of species tried to understand what they had witnessed. Ambassador Zextai hadn't left his monitoring station during the entire period. He couldn't. Every time he tried to step away, something new and unprecedented would happen that demanded his attention. The dragon, which ancient texts claimed slept for millions of years between its brief periods of devastating wakefulness, was now actively engaged with the human colony's ship. The creature had taken up what could only be described as a protective formation around the human vessel. Its massive body curved in a gentle spiral, creating a safe corridor of space that shielded the ship from cosmic radiation, asteroid fields, and the gravitational disturbances that plagued this region of space. What should have been a dangerous journey through unstable space had become the safest passage in the galaxy. The humans are treating it like a tour guide, reported Dr. Kixanel, the Council's chief xenobiologist. Her 4 arms gestured frantically at the display, showing the ongoing interaction. Look at this. The screen showed the human ship's main viewing deck, which had been converted into something resembling an observation lounge. Families gathered there regularly, with children pressing their faces against the viewing ports while adults pointed out various features of their cosmic companion. The little girl who had initiated contact, her name was apparently Emma, according to intercepted human communications, had become something of a celebrity among the colonists. They've given it a name, Dr. Kixanel continued, her voice strained with disbelief. They're calling it Shadow, as if it were some sort of pet. High Counselor Merthak's 6 eyes blinked rapidly in the pattern that indicated extreme stress. A pet. They've turned the most dangerous creature in the known universe into a pet. But Zextai was watching something else on the display. The dragon's runes weren't just glowing anymore. They were shifting, changing, forming new patterns he'd never seen in any of the ancient texts. The creature was communicating, but not in any language the Council's translators could understand. There, he said suddenly, pointing at the screen, watch the patterns on its hide. The other Council members turned their attention to where Zextai was indicating. The golden runes were indeed moving, flowing across the dragon's massive form in complex sequences. But, more importantly, the humans seemed to be responding to these changes. They understand it, breathed Dr. Kixal. Somehow, they're interpreting the rune patterns. The evidence was clear in the humans' behavior. When certain patterns appeared, groups of colonists would gather at specific viewing ports. When other sequences manifested, they would retreat to interior compartments. It was like watching a conversation conducted through cosmic semaphore. How is this possible? Asked Admiral Korth. We've studied those runes for millennia. Our best xenolinguists have spent entire careers trying to decipher them. How are humans, who've been in space for less than 2 centuries, able to interpret them? Before anyone could offer theories, alarms began sounding throughout the council chamber. Emergency broadcasts from across the galaxy flooded their communication systems. Report, ordered High Counselor Merthak. Sir, came the voice of the communications officer. We're receiving distress calls from the hegemony border worlds. Something is approaching their space at unprecedented speed. The main display shifted to show the border region between hegemony space and the unexplored sectors beyond. What they saw made everyone in the chamber fall silent with dread. 3 more dragons were approaching. These creatures were different from Nix Mortis, smaller, but no less terrifying. One appeared to be made of crystallized starlight, its body refracting cosmic radiation into deadly prismatic beams. Another seemed to be composed of pure dark matter, visible only as a creature-shaped absence in space that bent reality around its form. The third defied easy description, appearing to phase in and out of different dimensions. The hegemony fleet is mobilizing, reported Admiral Korth, his mandibles clicking rapidly. They're preparing to evacuate 17 systems. Wait, said Zextai, studying the new dragon's trajectory. Look at their course. The display showed the three creatures' projected path through space. They weren't heading toward the hegemony worlds at all. They were heading directly toward the human colony ship and its guardian dragon. They're going to converge on the human's position in approximately 36 hours, calculated the navigation computer. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. For cosmic dragons in one location, the combined psychic emanations alone would probably sterilize several systems. If they fought each other, the resulting devastation could affect an entire galactic arm. The humans have to be warned, said Counselor Vixare, her tentacles writhing anxiously. They need to evacuate immediately. With what? Replied Admiral Korth. Their ship doesn't have faster-than-light capability. Even if they started running now, they couldn't get far enough away to survive what's coming. High Counselor Merthak was already activating his communication array. Open a channel to the human vessel. Emergency priority. Static filled the chamber as the connection was established. After several tense moments, a human voice came through the speakers, male, middle-aged, with the calm confidence that humans seem to possess even in the face of impossible circumstances. This is Captain Mitchell of the colony ship New Hope. We've been expecting your call. The casual tone caught everyone off guard. Expecting their call? Captain Mitchell, said Merthak, struggling to maintain diplomatic protocols while fighting panic. This is High Counselor Merthak of the Galactic Council. You are in immediate danger. 3 more cosmic dragons are approaching your position. You must evacuate the area immediately. There was a pause, followed by what sounded suspiciously like human laughter. Counselor, with all due respect, we appreciate the warning, but we're aware of the approaching dragons. Shadow told us they were coming. Shadow told you? Merthak's voice cracked slightly. Well, not in words exactly, but the communication is pretty clear once you learn to read the patterns. The 3 approaching dragons are Shadow's family. They've been separated for millions of years, and now they're coming for a reunion. The council chamber erupted in pandemonium. Family? The cosmic dragons were family members? The implications were staggering. If the creatures were capable of forming family bonds, it meant they had emotional complexity beyond anything previously imagined. Captain, said Admiral Korth, cutting through the noise, you don't understand. When these creatures gather together, their combined presence has historically resulted in the destruction of entire civilizations. You need to leave the area now. Admiral, I understand your concern, but we've been discussing this with Shadow. The destruction in the past happened because the dragons were alone, confused, and afraid. They're powerful beyond measure, but they're also incredibly lonely. Shadow has been asleep for 3 million years, dreaming of its family. Our presence has given it hope. Zextai felt his understanding of the universe shifting. Captain, are you saying that the dragon's destructive behavior was caused by loneliness? That's our working theory. Think about it from their perspective. They're possibly the most powerful beings in existence, but they're also isolated by that same power. Most species flee from them on sight. They've never experienced genuine friendship or companionship from anyone who wasn't immediately terrified of them. On the display, they could see the human observation deck was busier than ever. Families had gathered in groups, with children drawing pictures and adults preparing what looked like gifts or offerings. Emma, the little girl who had started it all, was at the center of the activity, apparently directing the preparations for the approaching reunion. What is the child doing? Asked Dr. Kixanel, zooming in on Emma's activities. She's organizing a welcome party, came Captain Mitchell's voice, tinged with obvious pride. Emma seems to have a natural talent for understanding Shadow's communications. She says the arriving dragons are called Starweaver, Voidheart, and Dreambringer. They're Shadow's siblings, and they haven't seen each other since before most of our galaxy's current civilizations existed. The 3 approaching dragons were visible on long-range sensors now, their massive forms cutting through space with purpose. As they drew closer, their individual characteristics became more apparent. Starweaver left trails of cosmic dust that sparkled with newborn stars. Voidheart moved through space like a living black hole, bending light and time around its passage. Dreambringer seemed to exist partially in another dimension, its form shifting and changing as it moved between realities. "Counselor," said Captain Mitchell, "we'd like to formally invite the Galactic Council to observe this reunion. Shadow has expressed what we interpret as curiosity about the broader galactic community. We think this might be an opportunity for first contact on a completely different level." "First contact?" squeaked Counselor Vix R.A. "Captain, these beings predate most of our civilizations. They're not unknown. They're mythological. From your perspective, maybe, but from their perspective, you're all newcomers to their galaxy. Shadow remembers when your star systems were just cosmic dust. It's curious about what you've built, how you've grown." The audacity of the suggestion was breathtaking. The humans were proposing that the Galactic Council attend a family reunion of cosmic dragons, beings that could accidentally destroy star systems with a careless gesture. "The approaching dragons will reach your position in 18 hours, reported the tactical officer. Their psychic emanations are already affecting nearby systems. 3 trading posts have been abandoned, and the crystalline harmonists are reporting widespread disruption to their neural networks." "Shadow is working on that," replied Captain Mitchell. "It's been practicing controlling its psychic output since we explained that it was affecting other beings. The family reunion might actually be safer for the surrounding systems than you expect." As if to demonstrate the point, the runes along the dragon's hide shifted to a new pattern, and the psychic pressure that had been building suddenly eased. The crystalline harmonist distress signal stopped, and the abandoned trading post reported that conditions were returning to normal. "Impossible, whispered the Docteur Kixnad. It's suppressing its natural psychic emanations. That requires incredible control and conscious effort." "Shadow is highly intelligent," confirmed Captain Mitchell. "Probably more intelligent than any of us can properly comprehend. It understands the concept of minimizing harm to others. It just needed someone to explain that its presence was causing problems." Zextai found himself staring at the display showing the human ship. Children were running around the observation deck, apparently playing games while they waited for the approaching dragons. Adults were setting up what looked like decorations, colorful banners, and lights that would be visible from outside the ship. They were preparing to welcome cosmic gods to a party. "Captain Mitchell," said High Counselor Merithak, his voice carefully controlled, "if we were to accept your invitation to observe this reunion, what would be required of us? Just come with an open mind. And maybe bring some representatives who are good with children. Emma seems to be our primary translator, and she might need help managing 3 more dragons at once." The thought of a human child serving as translator between the Galactic Council and cosmic deities was perhaps the most absurd thing Zextai had ever heard. It was also, given everything they'd witnessed, probably exactly what was going to happen. "We'll need time to consider this," said Merithak. "Of course, the reunion won't happen for another 17 hours. Take your time." As the communication ended, the council chamber exploded into heated debate. Some representatives argued for immediate evacuation of the entire sector. Others suggested military intervention, though no one could explain what weapons might be effective against cosmic dragons. A few radical voices even suggested accepting the humans' invitation. Zextai continued to watch the display showing the approaching reunion. 3 ancient beings racing through space to reunite with their sibling, guided by a human child who saw cosmic horrors as potential friends. The universe had just become a much stranger and more wonderful place. The Galactic Council had made its decision, though not without considerable debate, 3 emergency votes, and 1 representative requiring medical attention due to stress-induced molting. A diplomatic fleet consisting of 12 ships from various member species was now approaching the coordinates, where 4 cosmic dragons would soon gather for the first time in 3 million years. Ambassador Zextai stood in the observation deck of the diplomatic flagship, watching the human colony ship grow larger on the view screen. Beside him, High Counselor Marathak nervously adjusted his ceremonial robes for the dozenth time, while Dr. Kixanel checked and rechecked her recording equipment. "I still think this is madness," muttered Admiral Korth from his position near the tactical station. "We're voluntarily flying into what should be an extinction-level event." "The humans seem confident in their safety," replied Zextai, though he couldn't quite keep the uncertainty out of his voice. "And they've had 3 days to observe Shadow's behavior." Through the view screen, they could see that Shadow had positioned itself in a complex spiral formation around the human ship, its massive form creating what appeared to be a natural amphitheater in space. The dragon's runes glowed with steady, rhythmic pulses that reminded Zextai of a heartbeat. Excited anticipation made manifest in cosmic proportions. "Incoming transmission from the human vessel," reported the communications officer. Captain Mitchell's voice filled the bridge, as calm and confident as ever. "Welcome to the reunion, Council representatives. Shadow is quite excited to meet you formally. We've prepared a viewing area on our observation deck where you can witness the reunion safely." "Captain," said High Counselor Marathak, "our sensors indicate the other 3 dragons will arrive within the next 2 hours. Are you certain it's safe for our ships to be this close?" Emma assures us that Shadow has explained the situation to its siblings. They know that smaller, more fragile beings will be present and have agreed to be careful. The idea of cosmic dragons exercising care was still difficult for most of the council members to process. These were beings that accidentally destroyed things simply by existing too intensely in the same space. "Sir," called out the sensor operator suddenly, "I'm detecting spatial distortions. The other dragons are arriving ahead of schedule." Reality itself seemed to ripple around them as 3 massive forms materialized in the local space. Starweaver emerged first, its crystalline body refracting nearby starlight into brilliant rainbows that painted the human ship in dancing colors. Voidheart followed, its dark matter composition creating a shadow that seemed to bend space around itself. Finally, Dreambringer phased into existence, its form shifting between dimensions in a way that made it difficult to look at directly. The psychic pressure from 4 cosmic dragons in close proximity should have been unbearable. Every being in the diplomatic fleet should have been driven mad or rendered unconscious by the sheer weight of their combined presence. Instead, there was only a gentle sense of vast intelligence and ancient wisdom. Shadow's protective influence was extraordinary. "They're beautiful," whispered Dr. Kixanel, her 4 arms moving unconsciously to capture every detail on her recording devices. And they were. Each dragon was magnificent in its own way, but together they created something that transcended individual beauty. The way they moved around each other spoke of eons of separation and the joy of reunion. Starweaver's light trails intertwined with Voidheart's darkness in patterns that suggested cosmic dances older than most civilizations. Dreambringer flickered between realities, apparently sharing visions or memories with its siblings. "Look at the human ship," said Zextai. The colony vessel's observation deck was packed with humans, all pressed against the viewing ports to witness the reunion. Children were pointing excitedly as the dragons greeted each other, while adults captured the moment with various recording devices. Emma stood at the center of the group, her small hands pressed against the transparent aluminum as she watched her cosmic friend reunite with its family. "The dragons are communicating," observed Dr. Kixanel. "Look at their rune patterns." Indeed, waves of light were flowing between the 4 massive creatures, complex sequences of symbols that carried information in ways the Council's computers couldn't fully analyze. The communication was beautiful to watch, like Aurora Borealis made conscious and purposeful. "Captain Mitchell," called High Counselor Marathak, "can you interpret what they're discussing?" "Emma says they're sharing memories," came the reply. 3 million years of separation means they have a lot to catch up on. Shadow is telling them about sleeping and dreaming, while the others are sharing their experiences exploring different parts of the galaxy. The concept of cosmic dragons sharing family stories like any ordinary relatives was so absurd it circled back to being heartwarming. "Sir," interrupted the sensor operator, "we're receiving a transmission from the dragons themselves." Everyone on the bridge froze. The dragons were trying to communicate directly with the council? "Put it through," ordered Mayor Thack, his voice barely steady. What came through the speakers wasn't language in any conventional sense. It was pure meaning, translated into concepts that various species could understand. The mental voice that touched their minds was vast, ancient, and surprisingly gentle. "Greetings, small builders. Shadow has told us of your constructions, your growths. We are curious." The words seemed to bypass the ears entirely, appearing directly in their consciousness in whatever language each listener understood best. The experience was overwhelming, but not harmful, like standing next to a waterfall and feeling the mist on your face. Dr. Kixanael was the first to recover. "Honor Dragons, we are pleased to meet you. We represent the Galactic Council, a federation of species that have worked together to build civilization among the stars." Civilization, the voice repeated, and there was something like wonder in it. "We remember when your stars were dust. To see what has grown. This is unexpected, pleasing." Admiral Korth cleared his throat nervously. "If I may ask, why did your kind withdraw from galactic affairs? The ancient records suggest you once interacted with younger species regularly." The pause that followed was filled with such profound sadness that several council members unconsciously moved closer to each other for comfort. "We became too large, too powerful. Our presence brought fear instead of joy. Small beings fled from us, and we understood we had become monsters in their eyes. So we withdrew, to spare them our terrible beauty." "But the humans don't fear you," pointed out Zextai. "They welcomed you." "Yes, the small builders' children see us as we truly are. Not monsters, but lonely giants seeking companionship. Your child Emma has taught Shadow that size and power need not equal isolation." On the view screen, they could see Emma waving enthusiastically at all four dragons. The massive beings had arranged themselves in a circle around the human ship, and their response to her greeting was visible as gentle pulses of light through their rune patterns. "What happens now?" asked High Counselor Merthak. "We would like to learn," came the reply. "For too long, we have been apart from the growing universe. We wish to understand what you have built, how you have grown, but carefully, gently, as the child Emma has taught us." Dr. Kixanael stepped forward eagerly. "We have universities, research stations, cultural exchanges. There are so many ways you could learn about our civilizations. And we could teach as well. We have seen the birth and death of galaxies. We remember the first stars, the first worlds. Perhaps it is time for isolation to end." The implications were staggering. The cosmic dragons wanted to rejoin galactic society. The knowledge they possessed, the perspectives they could offer, would revolutionize everything the Council understood about the universe. "There would need to be protocols," said Admiral Korth practically. "Ways to ensure safe interaction between your kind and the smaller species." "Agreed. The child Emma has already begun teaching us such protocols. Inside voices, she calls it. Methods too.